Today I have Ray Waddell with me. We're going to talk about wrestling. I do want to bring up the Coliseum. I know I harped on it a few episodes ago, but it's a big deal to me, and I'm sure it's a big deal to you too. And we'll just go from there, man. We're just going to talk about wrestling. That's what we're here to do, right?
Perfect.
So,
I'm good at that. So
yeah, yeah. And
do
how
it quite often.
I don't know how long you've been in it. I know you've been around for a while. I just don't know.
Uh, if I do the math, I started legally because I did backyard wrestling beforehand, but I had my first
Sure.
professional match at 18. Now I'm 33. So what's the math there? I wasn't ever good at math, but 15 years or so.
But
And,
yeah, somewhere in there.
so now I'm one of the old guys and
Yeah.
all the people I didn't listen to back in the day. Now I'm that guy telling everybody what to do and they don't listen to me. So it's all
Yeah.
just full circle.
Yeah. And that's all. And you said you did backyard wrestling. I'm in Southern Indiana, and there used to be, I never met these guys, but I know it was there. It was in Fort Branch. There was, and this is like right off the highway. There was just a ring set up in someone's backyard, and you would see just guys getting to work. It was so crazy to see. So was it kind of like that type, like legit someone's backyard, and that's what it was?
Yeah, literally my backyard, the house I still live in, it's been a family home for years. So like growing up, we had started on a trampoline, me and my brother did when I was like 4 years old. And as I got older, when I was 14, we had met a promoter named Shelby Adcock, and my brother had talked to him. He used to run shows here in Central City, Kentucky, where I live at. And like his grandson wrestles with us now. And like so his whole family was in wrestling, all his sons. It's almost like the Kentucky Von Erichs, really. Like it was like
Okay.
the dad was a wrestler and promoter. Then he
Yeah.
had like four sons, they were all wrestlers, and his grandsons went on to wrestle. But my brother met him and talked to him about it. He had got out of the business, but still had a ring, and he sold us our first ring on payments. I think we put like 500 down and then 100 a month till we paid it off. So we had a 16 by 16-foot ring, threw it up in my backyard and in the middle of the city, and just started doing wrestling shows every weekend.
Yeah, and that's cool that you say you started doing shows. I was about to ask you. So when you guys are just out there, and like you say, you're in the middle of this city or this town where, I mean, I've never been to Central City. I don't know how big it is,
You're
but
not missing much.
but believe me, man, Southern Indiana is not much different. But so would people just kind of, if it's just like a decent day out and you guys are out doing your thing, would they just kind of show up and just see
Yeah,
what you were
yeah,
doing?
kind of.
Or
When it first started, it was just like us and our friends, just
Mhm.
out there having fun. Even when we were on the trampoline, we'd start garnering like little crowds because might have had a trampoline, but we were still doing like attitude era stuff, trying to run each other over with cars and doing all kinds of
Yeah,
crazy stuff.
yeah,
So it's like people from the city would just like we'd have our neighbors doing family reunions, and they would just all come over and watch us crazy little white kids out here wrestling in the backyard, beating each other up. And then the longer it went, it would get to where we'd have 100, 200, not 300 on some shows just in my backyard. And we'd have the cops showing up because the whole alley's blocked off by
yeah.
traffic and people are parked in the neighbor's yard. And that's what eventually got us shut down. People kept calling in on us, and the commission caught wind in Kentucky. And, they don't like wrestling companies in the backyard that don't send them money every year. So
Sure.
that ended up getting us shut down and had my brother going to court, and he was going to be facing a lot of fines and all this stuff. And luckily we got it worked out where we ended up being able to get our license and run professional
Mhm.
shows.
And then, so you've been around. You've been New South. You've been WWA, but WWA is pretty much that's yours. Is that right? Or am I
Well,
just
my brother is the owner and the promoter, but we started it together. Like I've
okay?
always kind of had a hand in the pod and with booking and stuff like that.
Yeah,
But he's kind of the guy that's over it. He's the owner, but it's something we started, like I said, when I was 4 and he was 7, like in our backyard. And then
sure.
as it got, to be more professional, became more of an actual company. And he was more of the business minded guy that could kind of figure out
Mhm.
how to navigate all that stuff. And I was more of like the wrestling guy that would train all the people coming in and stuff like that. So it's kind of like I handled the wrestling and he handled a lot of the business stuff.
Okay, and I mean, that's got to be. So you're 33. So you guys, this probably started for you in 2009, probably somewhere in
Yeah,
there.
2009, April 2009 would have been my first legitimate show. And it wasn't even a WBA show. It was a small independent company up in Illinois who we had met through some other people we knew. And it was in a little church basement. It was about 120 degrees in the basement. The ring was awful. The crowd was awful. But at that moment, when it's your first show, I'm like, man, I'm a wrestler. The
Yeah.
first show, I was like, I'm a wrestler now, man. You know, looking back, it was nothing, but then it felt like you were in WWE when you're first like, hell, I'm getting paid to go out here and take bumps. This is awesome, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it just built from there. But yeah, 2009, I believe it was actually the same date of my prom. And I had like got a prom date and was going to go to prom. And then I got my first booking and went back and was like, sorry, woman, we ain't going to prom. I'm going to wrestling tournament.
And see, it's
So I
so
never went to prom.
crazy. It's so crazy because so like I was 18 in 2003. And for me, you didn't you guys paved your own way. You see what I'm saying? And like I wouldn't even have known. I was just some dumb kid. I wouldn't have known where to start. I wouldn't have known how to do it. But you guys just took the ball and ran with it. And now you guys, to me, you have a very good promotion in WWA. I think it's
Thank you.
fantastic. I think that the local stuff is awesome. And that's what's going to bring me to the Coliseum.
Yes.
I love the Coliseum. I love to watch wrestling in it. That's the only place we see you guys because it's just you guys are mostly Kentucky.
Yeah.
So for us, I live a little bit north of Evansville. That's quite a drive to get down where you guys are
Yeah.
normally. But man, the shows you guys put on in the Coliseum were always great. I've said it before. I loved it when you guys opened up the top tier and we could sit up there and watch the show. How much does the Coliseum mean to you guys?
Man, the Coliseum was awesome. I got to work there a few times when it was Coliseum Championship Wrestling, and then it was obviously not like it definitely wasn't the Lawler days, and it wasn't like when they
Yeah,
were selling it out. You know, you've seen the size of that building, and there'd be 30 people in there,
yeah,
and there'd be some shows that were a little bit better, but when I was going, it wasn't very good. And then whenever I don't know what happened with like the management of the building and the different bookers and promoters that come in there. Like I don't know if they got screwed on money, but they were like, we're not doing wrestling anymore. They shut down
mm,
Coliseum Championship Wrestling because for a while it was like the company owned or the building owned the company and they bring in different people to be the booker, but they had like the final say. So it just never really worked, I don't feel like. So
yeah,
whenever they shut that down, we went and talked to them and they're like, yeah, you can come look at the building. The same day that we go to the building and we didn't sign anything, but we talked to them about a deal was the day we found out that our dad had cancer.
mm,
So we had left the building and all that's going on. So of course that kind of went to the back of the stuff to worry about. So we ended up not running then. And I kind of thought like, well, that was our shot, but it's never going to happen. Then a
mm,
couple years later, my brother got back into conversation with him, and that's when we started running every single month. And like our first show there, I think we brought the boogeyman in. So, we wanted to have like a name to kind of get new eyes, get them there.
right,
Cause you really don't know when you go into a city for the first time, especially when the last time you were there, they were drawing 30 people,
right,
and of course it isn't cheap to run the building. So it's like
sure,
we wanted to get a name in there that would hopefully get the people in the building. And it did really well. And then we just were pretty good consistently. Like starting off, we brought in names, and then like as it went on, I felt like we kind of just like didn't need the names as much. We do them every
mm,
now and then, but some of our guys would just get over with the crowd to where on our own we were drawing decent crowds. And it was pretty consistent. Even like during COVID, we were still running the Coliseum for a while there, and that was the only place we were running, and we were still doing good. But the chairs 6 feet apart,
yeah,
going through all that was crazy. But the Coliseum's been amazing to me. I've had some of my favorite matches, some of the best moments in that building. Like um, guys like Ricky Morton would take us around the building and almost give us a tour. He'd tell us where he had ring rats hidden at up here, what he did over here,
yeah,
and it was just like there. It was like if the walls could talk in this building,
yeah,
man. It's
and
like, and
that
there's so many
that's
nook and crannies. It's just like you can get lost in that place. I loved it.
that's why I love the Coliseum. If you listen to, you'll hear Stone Cold bring it up. You'll hear Jarrett definitely brings it up. Lawler talks about it. Mick Foley talks about it. All these great names in wrestling have been to the Coliseum.
Yeah.
You know,
And
because they
a
were.
lot of people had the negative feelings on the Coliseum because I'd always hear that was where payday was.
That's what I've
And
heard.
every
That's
time
the
they
story. That's
get
what I was getting
paid,
to. Yeah,
yeah. And
nobody
no one was
liked
ever
it.
happy. No one was
Yeah,
ever happy with the pay they got. So they just said, screw the Coliseum.
right. And that's what, as a fan, I'm like, man, this is amazing. And but on their side, they were
Yeah.
like, this is the worst. And it's just, that's exactly right. That's what. But I
They'd
still
always tell
love
that
hearing those
story.
stories, man.
They'd always tell that story of Stone Cold and Jeff Jarrett, and he'd always talk about
Yes.
sitting on the Coliseum steps. And it's like, I get to walk up and down those steps where Steve Austin
Yeah.
first got heat with Jeff Jarrett. This is pretty
Yeah.
cool.
It doesn't get any. What was the check? Doesn't get any bigger. Isn't that what it was? And you
Yeah,
stare
he
at it or
said, staring
something.
at it ain't going to make it any
Yeah.
bigger.
Yeah. Yeah. But dude, that's what I hated hearing that they're going to shut it down for like 2 years, I guess. I
I'm
just read
not
the
really
article the other day.
I've heard, like, I've read a couple articles and I've heard stuff from the people who run the building. As far as I know, it looks as if they're gonna, I don't know if the city or another place in the city bought it, but they're looking to remodel it. But then
Yeah,
one of the people who work at the building were like kind of worried that when they got in there, they might see how much stuff they're gonna have to change to get it up to date and everything, and they might
right.
just shut it down and build
Yeah,
something else and tear it down. And then some people think they might just look at it and say, screw this and give it back to them. So
yeah.
it's really up in the air. I just hope that whatever it is, we can get wrestling back in there.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. So, I mean, that takes Evansville out of your guys' loop.
Yeah.
Now, is there, and I don't know how much of this you know, and but what is there like a, is there an alternative for you either in Indiana or even in Evansville at that point?
We're definitely on the look right now for another venue in Evansville. I feel like we've got a really good fan base there that we don't want to miss out on. Like our YouTube show was like always in Evansville, like, and that's
Mhm.
kind of like what we build towards all month is the YouTube Hysteria shows, which you can
Yeah.
find on YouTube / WWA is now. But yeah, we're looking for another venue in Evansville. It's also hard because there's other companies in Evansville that, you don't want to just jump into their building, even if we were running the city first. You don't want to go into someone else's building and start drama with another company. So
Yep.
it's really just on the lookout and trying to find connections and get into somewhere that can be good for both for us and the building.
And that's you brought up other promotions. You got I don't even know how I stumbled upon WWA. I mean, I know my son was getting into wrestling, and I was like, okay, we went to some of the big shows, like WWE came through, and like, all right, well, let's try and find a local place. And you guys came up, and we've gone ever since. But it's really tough to find smaller promotions. But you guys, I think, do a great job of getting your names out there, getting content out there, finding fans. And I really would, I don't want to say, I don't want to, I really think you have a great shot in Evansville for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, just finding that venue, dude. And like you said, I didn't know
Yeah,
that there
that's
would
what
be, I didn't know there would be kind of an issue, I guess, with other promotions because you really don't know. As me, just being a fan, I don't know who all's out there. But
yeah, there's two or three, and I'm not gonna say anything negative about them, but
sure.
in my opinion, they're on a different level than us.
Mhm.
But it's like the key word to promote is promote, and I feel like whether it's posters or paid ads or promos we post or just trying to keep like the internet knowing that we're out there and we could
Mhm.
do more, but I feel like that's why it's a little easier to find us because you got to spend money to make money and you got
That's
to,
right.
maybe you got to do Facebook paid ads or you got to get out and
Mhm.
post for the town. But yeah, I think that's why, a lot of times we'll come up before other promotions.
And that's you mentioned posters. Your guys, the what you guys do for every show with the basically individual posters. I mean, obviously it's all digital now, but you have these great just posters. They're almost old school wrestling posters. Like I forget which one I just saw the other day, and it was like the chain link fence, and you have it's broken in the middle, and you have your guys' talent right through the middle. It's a great looking poster. That's kind of what I'm getting at is your guys' promotion and stuff, the way you do things. You're on the right track. I don't see any problem
Like
with
I
you guys
feel like
filling
it goes
seats.
back into like if you want to like you want to be taken seriously and looked
Mhm.
at as like a legitimate company. I feel like a lot of like things like posters come along with that. Like
Sure.
if you just got a Microsoft Paint poster, I'm probably not going to take your company as serious because it's like honestly you didn't put an effort into even like making me want to see your show. So we got a guy actually overseas that does all of our graphic design and stuff, and he does a great
Really?
job.
That's
Yeah,
pretty
yeah.
awesome.
So all that's
Uh,
digital. We just email back and forth, and he knocks them out.
that's pretty cool. And that's how small our world is now. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Because you look 20 years
Yeah,
ago.
back in the day when we first started, we didn't know anyone like that. My brother made
Right.
all of our own
Yeah.
posters, and his was still really good compared to what you see some people doing in 2024. Like,
Yeah.
but and he taught himself on the computer because we didn't know anybody, and that's just how it was. You could teach yourself, but you could figure out how to do it. If you don't know how
Yep.
to do it or don't know anyone, you got to figure out a way, and that's pretty much been the story of our whole company.
That's awesome, dude. And you brought up Ricky Morton. You guys have always had this great way of bringing legends and former WWE talent, bigger names. And especially, I guess it did kind of stop like at the pandemic. Because I
Yeah,
remember my son and I went, I think it was one of the Indiana biggest battle royal or something like that. And then the pandemic. but
Yeah.
that was one of the cool things. Like when I took my son to the first show at WWA, Jeff Jarrett was there. And for me, that's huge just because
Yeah.
of where I started being a fan and seeing him wrestle. But to be like, to basically show my son, like, dude, this is one of the best guys to do it. And we're
Yeah.
meeting him here and we're going to watch a really great show afterward that he ended up being a part of. So,
Was that the he got involved in the main event with Stonewall?
yes. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. That was a good
And,
one. I think that was that also the one with Road Warrior Animal, I believe, was there for a meet and greet. Was
yep,
that the same
that's
show?
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so that was the first show I took my son to. So I mean, his mind is just, a little kid. He's loving it. It's great. And for me too, being a fan and seeing my son kind of getting that
Yeah.
same
That's cool for
thing.
me as a wrestler because that was me. You know what I mean? Like I
Yeah.
used to go watch these shows in Central City in the same buildings I get to wrestle in now. It
Yeah.
ain't WWE, but it's like man, as a kid who watched this stuff, and I'm sure it's even cooler as you being a kid watching it. Now you got your own kid who's watching it, and
Yeah.
it's a good feeling when you see these kids and you're like, maybe they're going to be independent wrestlers in 20 years.
Sure. Yeah. And it's so much fun. So but you talk those legends. One guy I did want to talk about was Tracy Smothers.
Oh yeah, I love Tracy.
I My dad would tell me stories about Tracy Smothers, and apparently he didn't live far from not like from me, like as in down the street, but like in our
Yeah,
area thing.
yeah,
I had no idea. But to see that when he came to the shows, we were there, and what you guys did for him was great. And was Tracy one of those guys that you got to really work with and kind of bounce ideas off and stuff like that?
yeah, yeah. So for a long time when we first started bringing Tracy in, I was a heel and he was a heel, obviously. And so it was always like, man, I want to work with Tracy, but I feel like I'm never going to get to do it. Then
Hmm.
when I finally flipped babyface, um, I convinced my brother because he was going to bring in Joey Ryan, and at the time he wasn't canceled. He was
Yeah,
everywhere,
that yeah,
and he had done good for us a few times. We had him I think 2 times before. So I'm like, let me and Joey Ryan team up against Tracy Smothers and Alexander Knight, who's now my tag partner.
mm,
So I got to actually get in there with Tracy, and by then I'd seen so much of his stuff that I knew exactly what we were going to do.
yeah,
And any Tracy match, you got 10 minutes of wrestling and 15 of promo, and that's the best part of it. I think we did a dance off.
yeah,
But he was always great to us because, like, even before we ever booked him, when I was going to those Coliseum shows, before we were ever legit, I was wrestling Mad Mex up there, and my brother talked to Tracy, and we had a bunch of our like backyard guys, and Tracy knew we were all backyard guys. Most people wouldn't have anything to say to you back then. He
hmm,
came up, talked to us, gave everybody advice, was super nice, and then you see that side of him, and then later on the show, he's out there doing his Tracy thing, going completely crazy,
yeah,
throwing stuff in the crowd. Um, so he like from the first day I met him, he was just like sweet, like just a sweetheart, like
yeah,
always nice to us, always took time to talk to people. And then like when I was doing IWA Mid South every week, he was up there and we'd go out there and do these scramble matches with all these dives. And we come back there and Tracy'd say, "You stole my dive, brother. What am I gonna do now? Y'all did all my moves." He was always great. We even gave him we even one day, one of our shows after we'd had him there for a while, we did like a potluck in the locker room and gave him like a lifetime achievement award from us just to like show our
yeah.
appreciation to him.
That's pretty cool,
So it
man.
was really, he's like one of the veterans, like name guys that after a while just became like a friend and not
Right.
like you had to worry about what you said. He just became
Mhm.
one of the boys. I mean, he's always one of the boys, but one of our guys.
Right. And that's what that was so
And
cool.
even
And
to this day with the high society stuff, like the whole pinkies up thing we do, it's all
yeah.
because like Tracy would do that. They'd flip him off and he'd throw up the pinky.
Yeah.
And him and Alexander Knight got to work together every time Tracy was here. So he was almost like mentoring him. So it was
Yeah.
like, let's just keep that going.
Sure. And that's awesome. I love Tracy Smothers. I love watching his old stuff, and just seeing where he popped up was always so interesting because when you see
And he
people,
was so good.
yeah, oh yeah, he was. And that's the thing I think with pro wrestling. I think some fans think that if you're not the champion or you're not on every show, that you're not that great. But there's
Yeah.
so many great talents out there that I don't want to say get looked over. There's just so much out there.
Yeah.
And he was one that I still like to go back and watch. I hear that name pop up and I'll check out the video or whatever. And it just I thought it was really great what you guys did for him, brought him in, and he'd come in and say a few words and all that stuff. It was really awesome.
Yeah, he was amazing, man. I learned so much from him, just how to get a crowd going. Like, it's not about the moves, it's about the interaction. And like,
Mhm.
I remember I'd always seen him work to a new South Championship Wrestling show in Franklin, and he was a babyface. And kind of, I'd seen him as a babyface when he was younger, but I was like, how's this gonna work? You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
everything I've seen in the last like 5 years, he's just been this ultra heel. And he went out there and was the best babyface on the whole show. I'm just like, why'd I ever question it? The guy's so good. He can do whatever he wants to do. He knows what he's doing. But yeah, he was definitely, and it was good for us too. You know what I mean? He
right.
taught all of us so much that
Yeah.
I feel like to this day, there's lessons that I repeat in training class that I heard straight from Tracy.
And see that was why I wanted to bring him up because I know you guys bring in a bunch of different people, and I don't know how it is. I'm not back there, but he always seemed like he was one that would help you guys out. You could tell that watching. Now,
Yeah.
and I don't know if everybody that comes through helps you guys
Yeah.
out, or if some people just come in, do the show, and leave. Whatever, that's your guys' business. But so we're gonna move
Most
on.
people are pretty great. Brutus Beefcake was a prick, but everybody
Was
else was nice.
it?
Yeah, Brutus Beefcake was a prick, but everybody else has been pretty okay. Greg
Yeah,
Valentine was just an old man that's kind of bitter, but he wasn't too bad.
yeah. Well, see,
Beefcake was, I wanted
that's
to
what
pull my own hair out working with him. He didn't have to cut it.
like meeting all these guys. They've all been super, like all this talent, all the stuff you guys used to bring in. They've all been super nice. It's never been a
Yeah.
bad experience. But
Yeah.
we're gonna move on a little bit. I got all kinds of stuff we could talk about. But what is now? So you're 33. You've done it for a while. Where are you going now? Like, where is your career? What do you plan on doing now?
I'm to the point now that I just like enjoy wrestling. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
not where I'm like I feel like it's kind of past the whole get to WWE thing, blah 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 that. Like of course that'd be awesome. But
Sure.
like I just have fun wrestling and traveling with my friends and like like I've just started doing some stuff at Paradigm Pro Wrestling and like I'm trying to get out there more in 2024 and just travel more and at the same time still keep building what we got here in Kentucky. Uh because I kind of look at like the end goal is like if we can, build our own company, even when I can't take bumps anymore, there'll be somewhere for me to work in wrestling. And I just want to be
Mhm.
around wrestling, whether it's a
Sure.
training facet, if it's booking, it's whatever. Like it's just all I've ever known. Like since I was a child, like people ask what's your first memory of wrestling. It's like I don't know. All my memories of wrestling, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it's just like been part of my life. So, definitely I'd like to go anywhere I can, but it's also like I'm gonna keep building here so that like when the time comes, we got somewhere we can work and stay in the business and keep giving back.
Awesome, dude. And you guys, you and Dakota France have just launched a system shoot podcast. Is that right?
Yeah, the System Shoots podcast. That was our tag name back in the day with some other members, but me and him would travel together as the system. Now
Mhm.
I guess TNA has their own system. I guess I should have copyrighted that.
I
But
just, I listened to your episode the other day, and I just caught that last night from Hard to
yeah,
Kill, and I just
yeah.
kind of all I could do was laugh. Like,
I
okay,
was like, I was in a way I was thinking, man, I'm glad I didn't wait a week to put it out. At least now, if they try to sue me, I can be like,
yeah,
look, I had a podcast out a week before y'all did it, and
right,
I've been
yeah,
like we were doing the system stuff in 2015 or something, So
right,
if it come down to it, we could prove it. Like I'm not trying to
yeah, yeah,
go
yeah. I
complain
just
about
saw
it,
that, dude. I
obviously. But
I
I'm
saw
like,
that this
man, we
morning.
dropped a podcast the same week. TNA's
Yeah,
like, you know what? We're going to start our own system. So
yeah.
it is what
Uh,
it is. But yeah, we were a tag team for years as a system. And I just know, like, we literally met on the school bus in high school.
mhm.
I got him into backyard wrestling behind my house. And then we, traveled all over the United States just wrestling together. So it's like, he's like my best friend. He was like the best man in my wedding. So it's like, what, who better to do a podcast with than
Sure.
him? So we're going to try to get it off the ground and do pretty good. We just got one episode out now, but we're going to try to drop them weekly.
And that's what you can tell. I did listen to it. I thought it was great. And you can
Thank you.
tell that you two have been around each other for a very long time.
And it can only get better from here. I had been doing a podcast with my brother for years off and
Mhm.
on, and it was probably more entertaining in the sense that we would argue, because we're
Sure.
totally different. So we'd argue a little bit more, and but I feel like I feel like we got such good chemistry that I think just with time, I think we'll do really good, and I think it can only get better. I feel like the
One
first
of
one
the
came off all
things
right.
one of the things I really liked was spoiler if you haven't listened to their podcast. This really doesn't ruin it or anything, but you brought up Ready to Rumble,
Oh
and
yeah, I love it.
I mentioned that to people like wrestling fans, and they're like, "What are you talking about?" Like that movie is incredible. It's so funny.
I don't care how many great the wrestlers or the Iron Claws they make. The number one movie in wrestling will always be Ready to Rumble in my heart. I've spent so many days in cars or just hanging out the house with guys like Nick Depp, literally quoting the whole movie from start to
It's
finish just
so
to pop
funny.
ourselves.
And Oliver
It's so
Platt
bad it's good.
is great. It's just the king, and it's a whole spin. It's fantastic.
I want a match with David Arquette before he quits. And I want him to
Oh
be Gordy. I don't want
man.
him to be David Arquette. I want Gordy one on one.
Come out in the
Oh,
sheriff uniform and all
yeah.
that.
I'll rent him a motorcycle if he'll come
Yeah.
in. And I won't kill him like Nick Gage did.
Yeah. All right, dude. We've we've talked about all kinds of stuff. There's all kinds of stuff I could probably talk to you about with, but go ahead and where can people find you? Where can they find your podcast, all your WWA stuff? Where can people find it?
For the podcast, just look up the System Shoots podcast. It's on Spotify, Apple Music, and a bunch of other podcast apps. For myself, all my social media is Ray Waddell WWA. That's RayWaddell WWA. And all the WWA stuff on all social media is at WWA is now, except TikTok is at WWA is now one. I guess someone had already stole that name before we got it. But yeah, WWA is now is everything for the WWA social media.
Awesome, dude. And everybody knows you
Currently,
can.
we're running currently, and we're about to start Litchfield monthly. We're doing Bowling Green, Kentucky, Central City, Livermore, so all over Kentucky, all different areas, and hopefully back in Evansville very soon.
Fantastic. Everybody knows you can find my stuff at Wrestleverse. Thanks, Ray, for joining me today. I've had a great time
Anytime.
talking to you. So thanks,
Same to
man.
you. Anytime you need a guest, just holler at me, and I'm sure we can find something to talk about.